Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here again. When I got the invitation to come and do a presentation, I was a bit shocked, because like Tuso said, when it says ICT directors, I wondered, what am I going to be saying to ICT directors? Our session chair, the bio you read is the past. I'm also learning. Today, building from the morning session, I am here as a beginner. So, my task is a bit simple, to give the context and the state of the ICT sector in Uganda. I have also had a long relationship with RENU, because I represent the regulator on the board, and Engineer Isaac is the one who inducted me into RENU, and I am happy to see him here. Tusu, of course, remains our grandfather and a mentor. We keep looking at him for inspiration. So, since we've lost time, I will try to take you through, just to provide context of what the ICT sector in Uganda is. Okay, I shall be a bit brief. I had shared a long slide, but coming off the morning discussion, I started thinking maybe I sent the wrong slide deck, but I'll try to fit in. So our ICT sector, as we know, has been a liberalized sector for a long time. The enabling environment is in place, but like has been discussed in the morning, the pace of change is quite fast. So even as we speak now, I would think many of the enabling policies, laws, regulations, and standards probably are due for change. But again, to keep the sector regulated, they still hold until change is made. So the sector has the communication sector is wide. It includes telecommunications, broadcasting, courier. We're looking at online data services, and now we've also advanced into film and multimedia. Many people do not know that, but also UCC deals with film and multimedia. Among the operators, I just picked the key ones who I thought would be relevant to this discussion. We have about 43 telecom operators, including 4 national telecom operators. Now, national telecom operators are those that were licensed to cover the entire country. But within the regulatory framework, we also have those that are specific to certain regions. We call them regional operators. We have 2 tower cores, or tower companies, that are providing the passive infrastructure to support the delivery of broadband services. When it comes to broadcast, we have about 77 television broadcasters. This is both free-to-air and pay TV, and over 300 FM broadcasters. I think we are one of those with the biggest number of FM broadcasters in the world. And then, of course, we also deal with courier, post and courier. That's an area that has not been fully tapped, but we also regulate it. There's usually a bit of confusion between courier and logistics, but the courier business deals with the smaller packages. In terms of regulation, we continue to implement a technological neutral licensing regime. This is really to encourage innovation. And entities like RENU have benefited from this, because then whatever new service you would like to test, to come up with, provided it is within the regulatory ambit, within the standards, we do not limit you. Of course, we're also looking at a lot of collaboration. You may have noticed that there is a lot of cross-sector collaboration as ICTs are increasingly integrated with other sectors, especially finance, education, agriculture now. So there's a lot of now cross-sectoral collaboration that is going on. Just to give a snapshot in terms of coverage, I picked this map to try and show you where we stand, focusing really on broadband. When it comes to geographical coverage, we have about 74% for 3G, and then 35% for 4G. The 4G is largely within the 10 cities, the major regional capitals, but also along the highways. And this is in line with the aspirations of the broadband policy. In terms of 5G, I know that's something people keep inquiring about. We only have it still at test phase within the Greater Kampala region and parts of Entebbe, so it hasn't yet stretched out. In terms of optic fiber, I thought I would also put that statistic there. We have about 33,000 kilometers. This, of course, includes backbone and then metro fiber. In terms of usage, I thought we'd also show this. We report 37.1 million subscribers, but there is a rider to it. The unique subscribers are 12.6 million. It's interesting that Uganda's market is dominated by multiple SIM holders. And our analysis of the data shows that on average, each individual has about 3 SIM cards. So if we were to look at the unique numbers, we could say we have about 12.6 million subscribers. I also looked at the demographics of the subscribers, and I think this would be of interest to you. You could see that about 3% is within the 18 to 23 years of age. The majority are between 24 and 43 years of age. This really matches with the population statistics, but it also points to the demand of ICT services. And like we had in the morning discussion, it is really about what service. These are now people that we would call are more digitally enlightened, and therefore continue to demand new and better services. We also look at, in terms of access, what devices are they using? As you can see in the trend, there's been growth in smartphone penetration. And this is, of course, because of the broadband services. Within the universities and research institutions, again, like was shared this morning, the phone is no longer just a phone. It is a platform, or it is a device that enables you to access quite a number of services. So we're beginning to see an increase in smartphones. Of course, the feature phones are still higher. So the feature phones have a bit of additional capabilities from the normal cartouches that we call the basic phones. And this is also shows the growing interest in broadband services. And rightly so, as the feature phones and smartphones increase, the basic phones, of course, are declining. I thought we would also talk about, provide a snapshot on access to the internet. So the internet subscribers are 15.9 million, largely, of course, accessed through mobile, and then also there is fixed. What we have seen is there is a growing trend in fixed connections. Year-on-year growth is almost, on average, 10 to 11%, which is quite tremendous. And this is largely driven by demand, especially from SMEs and then institutions. You may have noticed that post-COVID, it picked up. So this is an interesting number for the regulator, because previously, not much emphasis had been kept on fixed. We kept thinking it was not possible. But as the market changes, we're increasingly seeing that, which also means that capacity demands are increasing. And this is something that provides food for thought, especially for RENU, that the research institutions that fit under the MSMEs also continue to demand for better internet. Broadband usage, I also thought this would be something that we would share. And in particular, the consumption patterns. Again, as you may realize, this was just from analysis of data that we look at occasionally. About 32% of data is used for video. And then 14% is used for messaging. The other smaller numbers are web browsing, traffic, data storage, and all that. What I thought would also be of interest to this gathering is really the usage or the consumption patterns of the consumers, showing that it's largely on video and messaging. We also try to break down the messaging, and there's an interesting statistic there. TikTok is one of the dominant uses. Quite a number of consumers are spending a lot of time on TikTok, and this is because of the consumption patterns. We realize that people are still interested in video, but shorter clips. So what does that mean? This could also be used, or how do we convert this from social for educative purposes? These are some of the questions that we keep asking ourselves. What is crucial also for us is to look at affordability. The global standard is that we try to have affordability of broadband at less than 2% of a country's gross national income per capita. There's been a lot of outcry, of course, about the data pricing, and we have been tracking, and there's been quite a major decline. Our prices are coming down. Right now, the basic 1 GB mobile data price is about 5,000 shillings, which is about $1.3 US. When we benchmark this against the international benchmark of less than 2%, we're still slightly above. It's about 2.34%. So we still have some work to do in terms of bringing it to below 2%. I also put the table there just to give a regional comparative. These are figures as of December. We look an annual average. So we look at them on an annual basis to show within the region how we compare with our neighbors and our peers. In terms of use, of course, government has also continued to put out e-services, and we see quite a lot in the various sectors. Education, of course, there's the EMIS, e-learning. This also came out after COVID. We also have the TIMS, or Teacher Management Information System. We've also seen a lot of growth when it comes to the business and investment sector. And in the last 3 years, agriculture and JLOS also, these are areas that traditionally wouldn't have thought there would be a faster uptake of ICTs within that space, but we're increasingly seeing demand for ICTs there. And so government, in its drive to be more efficient, to encourage e-services, has continued to push or encourage for automation in that space. So I, of course, there are still areas that we continue to grapple with. If you saw from the map, we are not 100%, so there is still a coverage gap. In as much as in the morning we said we should not be paying attention to, within this space, we should be looking at the service. At the national level, our aspiration is 95% geographical coverage of broadband. So we are still at right now we're at 74. There is still work to do, and hopefully by 2030 we should have reached there. Of course, there are interventions. The government is directly investing through the national broadband infrastructure. The development partners have come up to support the UDAP project. Under UCC, we have the Uganda Communications Universal Service Action Fund, UCSAF, which provides infrastructure subsidies to operators in areas that are not commercially viable. And here we're also trying to support, especially the CAPEX for establishing infrastructure. The usage gap, of course, still exists because of digital literacy. The desire for an inclusive digital economy means digital literacy has to be stepped up, and that there is concerted effort to getting there. Locally relevant digital content. This is one of the springboards we believe that if we push it, it will increase demand, and then we can't stop emphasizing innovation. In terms of affordability, as you saw the smartphone graph going up, of course we would love that this goes much further. So we're seeing a lot of innovative approaches, especially from the private sector, device schemes, product and service offerings. Whereas from the sector itself, ICT, we are still trying to lobby with the Ministry of Finance for tax policy reviews, because taxation is one of the key drivers of the high price for devices. Something I thought would also shed light on is cybersecurity and data protection. In the last 2 years, we've seen the establishment of the Data Protection Office. So there is increasingly awareness about personal data protection, and the Data Protection Office is sensitizing entities about what needs to be done in terms of protecting personal data. This is because this is something that when you look at how vulnerable people are online, it's something that needs attention to be paid to. When it comes to cybersecurity, of course we continue to do the incident monitoring, of course also looking at network capability and then capacity building. This is one of the benefits of belonging to an NREN like RENU, because RENU directly engages with the cybersecurity frameworks. And through their training, through their capacity building, through sharing of information, they're able to immediately transmit that to their clients firsthand. So that is one of the benefits that institutions would receive by interacting by engaging with RENU. And from our reports, we've seen that even the response rate, especially on the RENU network, is one of the fastest. So I should give you kudos for that. Also in terms of skilling and capacity building, there's a lot of skilling, training, information sharing, which helps maintain secure levels of cybersecurity. There are issues that we continue to observe. Key among them are compromised systems and devices. I know within the academic institutions there is a lot of bring your own device. So what mechanisms do you put in place? Operator diligence. This is where, of course, we give RENU credit, because through our cybersecurity, our SAT, there's quite a lot of engagement and monitoring in that space. User behavior, again, our users we realize awareness about online safety is still low. So there is a concerted effort to step that up. The challenges that exist at the regulatory level within the sector. Of course, I've talked about the digital divide, I won't repeat that. What I would emphasize, what we are looking at now is how fast does policy or regulation respond to the changes that are happening. One of the key things, for example, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, but even as Uganda, we still do not have a strategy on AI. And those are things that are now challenging us, that we need to be able to come up with it. Yet we're already seeing some use cases within the academia and even the health space. Limited complementary infrastructure. Growth of ICT does very well when it moves in tandem with electricity. The national digital grid, national electricity grid rather, is reported to be between 21 and 25%. So that means it's a challenge to extend digital services faster when the electricity component is not there. Of course, green energy, renewable energy has come into play, and we're very happy with the Renu Mesh because that's a solar-powered router. It fits within some of the areas that we are looking at. We've talked about technical capacity, of course, continuous skilling at all levels, basic to specialized. That is a work in progress. I thought I would just provide a sector outlook as I conclude, and we put it within 4 areas. What do the consumers want? What do the operators want? What is government looking for? And then as institutions. So all morning we've talked about services. Tusu said it best. I can't repeat it. I would dilute the message. I would just emphasize convenient, faster, affordable, integrated solutions. Of course, we are seeing increased demand for cloud computing and virtualization. That's from the consumer's side. And of course, quality of service. The operators, we continue to encourage innovation. What they want from us are dynamic regulatory frameworks that are able to respond to, that are able to support them to respond to the needs of their consumers. They're also looking at standardization across the borders, because you may realize it's not about a single jurisdiction, the market spread across borders, multidisciplinary forums like these. When I say I'm here as a beginner, I'm here to learn, because there's a lot of knowledge that we pick from such fora that help us then go back and try and shape the narrative when it comes to regulation. When it comes to governments, one of the things we're looking at are homegrown solutions to support both regional and global markets. And of course, climate change and environment. How does ICT help us mitigate the risks related with that? When it comes to institutional capacity, institutions now, we are looking at the SMEs. Again, reliable capacity. So we're talking about equipment, systems, processes, and then, of course, integrated solutions that support collaboration across the board. So how do we think we should be able to, what enablers are in place? The beauty about it is that government has already prioritized ICTs. We've been singing about it, but I can attest to the fact that in the next strategy, the National Development Strategy, 3 out of the 5 objectives point to ICTs. And there are already about 15 proposed strategies that point to ICTs in both education, health, agriculture, trade, and all that. We're also looking at sector-specific engagements or collaborations across the board. not to speak to ourselves, but listen to other sectors, be it education, health, energy, and all that. Joint implementation of projects, because at the end of the day, the consumer will benefit, but also it will help the country obtain revenue. And then, of course, continuous benchmarking with our peers across the board, such that we are standardized, but also our products can access and be acceptable in the other markets. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Andrew, for the elaborate, and this is the beauty of having statistics. They go deep into all this. So a hand of applause to Andrew. In the interest of time, we shall take 2 to 4 questions, and I think we shall take at once, then Andrew responds. There's Mujabi, so we start with him. Yeah. The culture here, the name, the institution, then the question.
Thank you very much. Dr. Francis Otom, Mountains of the Moon University in Fort Portal. I was very excited when you gave the statistics of what we have at the moment. But also, when you look at it, particularly when it comes to the cost, I don't think it's really a fair representation. Even if you put us number 2, if you look at the other costs of living, really, you see that that relative price is high. The setting up of Reno was, among other things, to facilitate collaboration. So connectivity is the key. High price is certainly an impediment. Now that there is a good relationship with you, and you are the government in this case, what are we going to do? Is it very difficult to remove the taxation from the internet services, at least those provided to educational institutions? And also at the Secretariat, what can we do to make sure that the costs really go down? When we are comparing this cost with the other countries in the world, let's not forget about the cost, the value of our currency. Thank you very much.
Robert, it would be nice if we have 1 or 2 ladies for gender balance.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm called Robert Mujabi from the Uganda Virus Research Institute. My first question is almost similar. Internet is no longer a luxury, but a means of delivering every service. Out of office, I was telling someone I'm also a farmer, and I don't know how much losses I make because I'm not able to virtually be at my farm at the dot. And I would be there, but because of the limiting cost of internet. And the only reason this is a limiting factor is the price. So as the regulators in this industry, I think it is very important to appreciate that common goods or commodities like a road, other than the recent road where the ICT directors, the ICT chairpersons, where he pays on a daily, but roads are free. And IT, internet should be a free good like the road. The other thing, as a regulator, Andrew, I have to bring to your attention that Facebook is still illegal in Uganda, and from your presentation, short videos are very good. Short videos are good for learning. Short videos are good for advertising. People are making a way of living through short videos. And Facebook is still illegal in Uganda, and I think UCC has a hand in it. And finally, which is a big problem, I don't know if you have the capacity to address it, but I will pose it. Can we request, I have to tone down my voice, can we request that UCC ceases to be a political tool where certain people are victimized? I remember I was also told that the internet went off during elections through the help of UCC. These are facts, but really, as a regulator, to be used as a political tool, it doesn't sound very good. Thank you very much.
Oh, so we have to sue. So, yeah. I think that will be the maybe last. Okay, so you will be the last. To sue last, then he answers.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Andrew. Part of my comment to be in defense of Andrew, even if I do have my question. I know that the Minister of ICT and National Guidance and UCC are always fighting government about the high taxation. And there's high tension between the Minister and the Minister of Finance. You know, the people who said the taxes are finance. And the Minister of ICT is frustrated because it disables their mandate. So that is the fact. The rest you can respond to Andrew. My comment was on two things, Andrew, and I would appreciate your response. One was the classification of 3G as broadband. The applications are moved on so much that if you just have 3G, you actually cannot use a smartphone, and that's the only way of accessing real broadband in Uganda. We did recommend at some stage the elimination of 3G as broadband classification. So your comment about that would be appreciated, because for Renew, that is very important. The other one about data pricing has come up, but in a different way. Comparing with the other countries is okay, but normally, as you rightly said, it's done based on per capita income. So we might be low in seeming absolute terms, but per capita income as a percentage, we are still among the highest. Then finally, I think REN should see the opportunity here, because there is starvation for broadband. So I see an opportunity for Renew to expand and fill that gap of broadband. Thank you.
Thank you to Sue. So one last one. Your name and institution, please. Then the question or comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Gilbert Suchen from Busitema University. The issue of cost has been brought up, the issue of Facebook, but let me talk about the 3G and the 4G. In your statement, the concentration of 4G is mostly in the urban centers. What are you doing for us who come from rural areas? Because we can't run certain applications because of the limitations of 3G and so on. Thank you.
In 30 seconds, and make it brief.
All right. Thank you. Mugabe Samuel, Makerere University. Mine is about research and innovation. What measures is UCC putting in place to enable research in the management of the radio spectrum resources, given that we have a lot of traffic coming in from the ever-increasing usage or adoption of ICTs. So what measures has UCC put in place to enable higher education research institutions to carry out research in radio spectrum management, basically offloading traffic from the spectrum radio resources to Wi-Fi, greening the spectrum? We are largely depending on foreign solutions from Huawei, Ericsson. Do you offer radio spectrum resources for research? What measures are in place? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for the questions. I will attempt to answer them to the best of my abilities. And these are quite thought-provoking questions. The one that kept re-echoing was the one on pricing. And indeed it is true. In as much as in absolute terms, we may be going down, but when you compare it to the consumption basket, it is still relatively high. I forgot, I didn't put it in the slide, but we looked at that price as a comparative to the household expenditure per month, and it was coming to almost about between 15 and 18%. Now, ordinarily that would be high. So what are the interventions being undertaken to bring it down? Tuso has spoken about the continuous engagement with Ministry of Finance on matters to do with tax policy. I actually have been part of the team that for the last 5 years, every September, we go back to Ministry of Finance to say, can you remove the taxes? Because it is known that as you increase penetration, even GDP will go up. But the government has dual, or could I say competing priorities. And we also sometimes sympathize with the team at Finance to be able to balance the needs. Unfortunately, ICT sector has been looked at as a cash cow, and the operators will tell you we are one of the highly taxed sectors in the economy. But each time we go to them, here I would reveal, they tell us, what alternative do you have? And that is where the struggle keeps going to convince them. But one of the areas we have looked at, some of the things we think can bring the price down. One, of course, is building a critical mass of consumers. So when you talk about locally relevant digital content, hopefully once we have that and we have the critical mass, then we can take advantage of economies of scale and the prices come down. That's a model, for example, that RENU has leveraged on, because you have a critical mass of education institutions and users. So if this can be scaled up. We also continue we're also promoting use of alternative approaches for delivery of broadband. Right now there is an aggressive work is being done to encourage satellite provision as an alternative for fiber and microwave. Hopefully these alternatives will help bring down the cost of broadband services. I spoke about energy. About 60 to 70% of the towers in the country are run on diesel. Now, just imagine that translates to the cost of a service. Of course, we're encouraging use of green energy, but the initial setup costs are still high. So the operator has to make money. So one of the things we're trying to do also is work with our colleagues in the other sector, the energy sector especially. How do we plan together for the growth, for the spread of the grid, such that probably these can reduce the OPEX and eventually translate into reduced prices. But of course, we shall not relent our continuous lobbying to government to bring down the cost of services, more especially for research and education, because those are critical. What I forgot to add is that we have also engaged now onboarded Ministry of Education, the parent Ministry of Education institutions, to join us in the call that it's important that at least internet for education institutions is brought down. One of the interventions, I don't know if Nicholas talked about, is that RENU is now going into schools. This is to build the critical mass, secondary schools, primary schools in the near future. UCC has actually supported RENU in spreading out into schools. The long-term goal is, if we have that critical mass, then we can lobby for a reduction in taxes, and hopefully on the ministry side, our call shall be heard. I thought I would spend a little more time on pricing because it was something that came up quite frequently. There was this one on UCC being a political tool. I shall leave that one because we are part of government. The issues to do with Facebook, again, my minister has continuously spoken about what is being done at policy level. I shall not delve into that space, but just to let you know, there have been continuous discussions there, and eventually, when they materialize, hopefully, it shall be opened. Tusu raised the issue of, yes, moving away from 3G. Within the broadband policy, 3G was categorized as broadband, but there have been discussions, and also from our analysis. In the broadband policy, they had, for example, looked at it, added a speed of 4 Mbps, which we thought was too low. And indeed, the market has actually responded, even before policy interventions come in. We are looking at now an average, a minimum of about 10 Mbps. But for meaningful connectivity, because that's now what really will make meaningful use of broadband services, yes, probably we should be pushing for 4G as a bare minimum. Of course, this has got to be agreed in collaboration with the industry. Our approach is really to engage with the industry. And if you looked at the usage patterns, we believe the demand patterns will eventually push for increased spread of 4G. And in relation to the question raised by my brother from Busitema University, Gilbert, one of the regulatory requirements in the licenses of the operators is to extend, one is to extend coverage to the entire country, but also we monitor quality of service. So we're beginning to realize there's a lot of spread. One of the operators, I think now, virtually all their sites are 4G, but also you have to look at, they usually come back and say, what is the utilization per site, average revenue per user obtained from that site. Maintaining a 4G site is quite costly. And so we have to try to drive the demand such that it makes business sense. But to address your concern, there is a regulatory push, and the operators have rollout plans which we monitor to make sure that they improve the quality at all levels. I think the last one was on spectrum research. Yes, the spectrum management framework allows for that. I'll just invite you to visit the UCC website. There are even guidelines on what spectrum has been allocated for research. We have also seen, for example, now there are tests going on digital audio broadcasting to be able to free up that spectrum, hopefully, that it can be allocated for other uses. But indeed, we continue to encourage innovative ways on how to utilize spectrum. I think I've answered all of them. Thank you very much.